It is Saturday, January 24th, 2026. Welcome back to the Deep Dive.
Good to be here.
Today, we are putting aside the usual tech reviews, the market sweeps, all of that, to really focus on a biographical case study. And it's one that has, quite literally spanned the last decade of cultural conversation. We're looking at a timeline that effectively ends, or it maybe just pauses, right about now, in early 2026.
It's a timeline that, if you pitched it as a movie script, it would probably get rejected for being too repetitive.
A little too on the nose.
Agree. Too unbelievable.
Exactly. It's the story of a specific kind of American persistence, though I guess whether you call it ambition or pathology really depends on which side of the wire transfer you're on.
We are talking, of course, about William Zervakis McFarland, Billy McFarland.
The man himself.
And before anyone rolls their eyes and says, oh, we know cheese sandwiches 2017, I want to frame this differently today. We aren't here to just rehash the Fyre Festival memes from almost 10 years ago. We are here to look at the entirety of the file, from his first ventures in 2013, all the way to the collapse of the sequel in 2025.
Correct. And the reason this is a deep dive and not just a recap is that we have to look at the mechanics, the nuts and bolts of it.
The how.
The how. We need to understand the financial engineering, the psychology of the recidivism, and the bizarre legal gray zones that allowed a convicted felon to launch a second multi-million-dollar pre-sale campaign while he still owed $26 million in restitution.
It's incredible. So we've got a massive stack of sources today. We're pulling from federal court records, Bureau of Prisons incident reports, that Jonathan Taylor lawsuit filing from 2023.
And, of course, the great investigative reporting from the New York Times and Rolling Stone about the whole debacle in Mexico last year.
So our mission, really, is to figure out how a college dropout convinced the world he was a tycoon, went to prison, came out, and then convinced a whole new set of people to do it all over again.
It raises a pretty fundamental question, I think, about the venture capital ecosystem and, the whole creator economy. Is Billy McFarland a glitch in this system? Or is he actually the system working exactly as designed, just without any breaks?
That is the question. So let's start at the beginning, but let's move past the Wikipedia summary. We know he was born in 91, grew up in Short Hills, New Jersey. His parents were real estate developers.
Right. So comfortable. Upper middle class. This is not a rags to riches story by any means.
Not at all. He goes to the Pingree School, a pretty prestigious private school, then off to Bucknell University,
where he drops out in his freshman year. And I think we need to contextualize that for a second. We're talking 2010, 2011.
Okay.
This was the peak era of the Thiel Fellowship mentality. Peter Thiel paying smart kids to not go to college.
Right.
So the cultural narrative in tech was that higher education was a bottleneck for genius.
Right. If you were really smart, you dropped out to build something.
Exactly. And McFarland clearly internalized that signal. He saw himself in that mold.
So his first attempt at building is a company called Spling, an ad platform. TechCrunch covers it, but the coverage is, it's pretty lukewarm.
Lukewarm is generous. They basically call it a clone of services that already existed.
And that's really the first data point in the pattern, isn't it?
It really is. Spling wasn't a technological innovation. It was what you might call a mimetic innovation. He copied the look and feel of a tech startup, but without any of the underlying proprietary value.
Style over substance.
All style. But the real training ground, the place where he really honed the playbook for the fraud that would come later, was his next venture, Magnises, in 2013.
Okay, let's drill down on Magnises, because this is where the financial disconnect really starts to show. For anyone who's blocked this era out, Magnises was essentially a club. You paid, $250 a year?
$250 a year, and in return, you got this heavy metal black card.
It looked impressive.
It did. But we need to be really clear on the technical side here. This was not a credit card. He didn't have a banking charter. He wasn't underwriting any credit risk. He was, for all intents and purposes, just cloning the magnetic strip from your regular Wells Fargo or Chase debit card onto a cool-looking piece of heavy metal. It was a card skin.
But the value proposition wasn't really the payment method itself. It was the access. He had this townhouse in the West Village. He threw parties, promised networking.
The whole status-oriented millennial pitch.
And he raised $1.5 million in seed funding, which, it's not a huge amount in the grand scheme of startup land, but it's real money.
It is real money.
Yeah.
But here is where we need to introduce what I'm calling McFarland math. It's his own special brand of valuation metrics.
McFarland math. I like it.
Because in 2013 and 2014, he is out there shopping Magnises around to potential investors. And he produces these term sheets claiming the company is worth $90 million.
Okay, let's just pause on that. $90 million.
Yep.
To justify a $90 million valuation, especially in a Series A or B round, you generally need to show some pretty significant recurring revenue. Or, massive off-the-charts user growth. What were the actual numbers?
So when the authorities eventually subpoenaed the actual financials as part of the later investigations, it turned out Magnises had generated about $60,000 in revenue.
Wait, say that again? 60,000.
60,000. 60.
Is that total? Or like monthly recurring?
That was total recognized revenue at the point he was making that $90 million valuation claim.
My math isn't great, but we are talking about a valuation multiple that is, 1,500 times revenue?
Something like that.
That's not just optimism. That's not even aspirational. That's fantasy. How does an investor look at a $90 million claim backed by 60 grand in sales and not just laugh him out of the room?
This is the critical insight, I think, into the venture capital landscape of that very specific moment. McFarland wasn't pitching revenue. He wasn't selling a balance sheet. He was pitching brand heat.
It's a sizzle.
All sizzle. He argued that Magnises had captured the millennial influencer market. This demographic that traditional banks like Amex were absolutely desperate to reach. He sold the potential of the user base, not the reality of the business.
So he was basically arbitraging the FOMO of older, richer bankers.
Exactly. He presented himself as the gatekeeper to the cool kids. And if you're a 50-year-old investment banker, terrified of losing relevance, terrified you don't get it anymore, you might just skip some of the due diligence because you desperately want to believe this gatekeeper.
But the math always wins in the end. Magnises is burning cash, it fails to scale, and it effectively becomes this little Ponzi scheme where new membership fees are just paying for yesterday's parties.
A tale as old as time.
But instead of folding, he pivots. 2016. Fyre Media.
And the premise here was actually, it was somewhat sound on paper, an app to book music talent directly.
The Uber for booking artists.
Like disintermediating the big clunky talent agencies.
Sure, if you can get the artists on board, if you can build that marketplace, that really is a billion-dollar business.
But McFarland doesn't have the patience to build a marketplace. That's slow, it's boring, it's hard work. He needs the splash. He needs the launch party to end all launch parties.
It needs Fyre Festival.
And he's Fyre Festival.
Okay. So I don't want to spend the next 20 minutes on the cheese sandwich, but I do want to talk about the financing of this thing. Because when you look at the court documents from 2017, the way he funded this festival was, honestly, it was terrifying.
It was. And this is where we have to talk about something called merchant cash advances, or MCAs.
Okay, explain that for the listener who might not be in finance. How is that different from just, a regular loan from a bank?
Well, a standard bank loan looks at your creditworthiness, your assets, and they charge an interest rate that's regulated by usury laws.
Right.
There are caps. An MCA is technically not a loan. It's structured as the purchase of future receivables. So a lender gives you, say, $100,000 today in exchange for $140,000 of your future credit card sales.
So they're just buying your future income at a discount.
Precisely. And because it's framed as a commercial transaction and not a loan, it gets to bypass a lot of those interest rate caps.
And McFarland was addicted to these.
He was drowning in them. He took out millions in MCAs. The prosecutors found one specific agreement he signed that had an effective annualized interest rate of 120%.
120.
120%.
That is just, it's a death spiral. There is no legitimate business on earth outside of maybe like cartel drug trafficking that has high enough margins to service 120% interest debt.
Correct. You can't out-earn that. And this explains the utter chaos of the festival planning. He wasn't just disorganized. He was fundamentally insolvent from day one. Every single dollar that came in from a ticket sale was immediately being siphoned off to pay the MCA lenders from the week before.
He was on a treadmill that was moving faster than he could possibly run.
And that desperation leads directly to the fraud.
Which is when he started sending, fake wire transfer screenshots to vendors to prove he'd paid them.
Right, and he doctored inventory sheets to make investors think he owned millions in stock shares that he absolutely did not own.
He was literally just photoshopping brokerage statements. I remember reading that. He would cut and paste numbers. It wasn't some sophisticated hack. It was digital arts and crafts.
And yet it worked. For a while. It worked long enough to get thousands of people on planes to the Bahamas in April 2017.
And we all know the result. The FEMA tents, the rain, the total collapse of logistics, the cancellation after everyone's already there.
The $100 million class action lawsuit.
And then his arrest in June 2017.
But this is the part of the story where the timeline usually just fades to black for the general public.
Yeah.
They think. Arrest, jail, end of story.
Right.
But for us, looking back from 2026, the period between his arrest and his actual sentencing is, in my opinion, the most revealing part of his psychology.
This is the NYC VIP access era.
Exactly.
He is out on $300,000 bail. He's living with his parents in New Jersey. He is facing decades in federal prison. And what does he do? He fires up the old email list again.
It is almost pathological. He takes the email list of Fyre Festival victims, people who he had already defrauded, who had lost thousands of dollars, and he targets them with a brand new scheme.
NYC VIP access. He starts offering tickets to these hyper-exclusive events. The Met Gala, Burning Man, Coachella, the Grammy Awards.
Let's be very, very clear about the Met Gala.
You cannot buy a ticket to the Met Gala.
You cannot. It is an invitation-only fundraiser for the Costume Institute. Anna Wintour herself personally approves every single person on that guest list.
So how does he even sell this? If I'm some wealthy millennial in 2017, how do I possibly believe that Billy McFarland, the guy from the Cheese Sandwich Festival, can get me into the Met Gala?
It's pure social engineering. He didn't sell it as, I have a ticket for you. He sold it as, I have a relationship. He preyed on the insecurity of the nouveau riche, the people who have money but not status. He implied that there's a backdoor for everything, a secret menu if you just know the right guy. And he, Billy McFarland, was the guy.
But he wasn't the guy. He was just taking their money.
He was just taking their money. It was wire fraud, pure and simple. And he was caught because, and this part is still unbelievable to me, he was being filmed by the documentary crew for the Netflix film while he was running the scam.
You can hear the audio in the film.
You can hear audio of him spoofing his voice, pretending to be some other ticket broker on the phone. It's insane.
It's the unstoppable hustle, in the worst possible sense of the phrase. He literally could not stop himself from transactionalizing his entire existence, even when he knew the FBI was monitoring his every move.
And that behavior is what sealed his fate. The prosecutors had him dead to rights. So in March 2018, he pleads guilty. In October, he's sentenced to 6 years in federal prison and ordered to forfeit $26 million.
So he goes to prison, FCI Otisville, then he gets transferred later. Now, most white-collar criminals who go to federal prison, they just keep their heads down.
Right. They teach a yoga class, they work in the library, they try to get time off for good behavior. They just want to do their time and get out.
Billy McFarland is not most criminals.
No, he's not.
So let's talk about the prison years from 2018 to 2022, specifically this solitary confinement incident. He claims he was thrown in the SHU, the Special Housing Unit, because he was trying to write a book and launch a podcast from his cell.
That's his version of the story. The Bureau of Prisons is, notoriously opaque, but generally speaking, running a for-profit business from inside a federal facility is a major, major violation. Inmates have limited phone privileges, limited email access through a system called core links. You're absolutely not allowed to conduct commercial activity.
But he was trying to record voice notes to send out to a collaborator.
Yes. The plan, apparently, was to dictate a memoir and potentially host a podcast, all through the prison phone system. He was treating his own incarceration as just another content vertical, live from the inside.
Which brings up the Son of Sam laws, right? In New York and federally, there are statutes designed to prevent criminals from profiting from the publicity of their crimes. How did he think he could get away with monetizing his story while still owing $26 million to his victims?
The legal framework there is actually pretty complex. The original Son of Sam laws have been challenged on First Amendment grounds and struck down. The modern versions are a bit different. Usually the government can seize the proceeds of the book or movie to pay restitution, but they can't necessarily stop the speech itself from happening.
So his thinking was probably, let me make the money first, and we'll fight over who gets to keep it later.
I think that's exactly it. The hustle never stops.
And speaking of hustling for money inside prison, we have to talk about Jonathan Taylor. This all came out in a lawsuit that was filed later in 2023. Taylor was a fellow inmate, right?
Yes. And this is a detail that it boggles the mind.
No.
Jonathan Taylor, another inmate, claims he met McFarland inside. And while they were both serving time, McFarland convinced Taylor to invest $740,000 into his next post-prison venture.
Hold on a second. How? How does an inmate transfer $750,000 to another inmate?
It wasn't like he was handing him bags of cash in the yard.
Right. I'm assuming it wasn't commissary funds.
No. It would have all been arranged through outside proxies, family members, lawyers, existing business accounts. But the core of it is that McFarland, while wearing a beige prison jumpsuit, was able to convince a peer, another inmate, to part with $740,000 for a company that did not exist yet.
It just shows that his charisma it's like a weapon. It works even without the fancy clothes in the West Village townhouse.
No. It's source agnostic. The charisma functions anywhere.
So he ends up serving less than 4 years of his 6-year sentence. He gets out in March 2022. First to a halfway house in New York, then full freedom in September.
And almost immediately, we get the launch of PYRT.
Spelled PYRT.
Of course.
A hard pivot into pure tech bro buzzword territory.
Oh, absolutely. This was late 2022. The crypto winter was setting in, but the metaverse was still this lingering concept people were throwing money at. So McFarland pitches PYRT as a, quote, virtual, immersive, decentralized reality.
Which means absolutely nothing.
It's a word salad. It means nothing. Vanity Fair at the time called it Fyre Festival II without the capacity issues.
A great line.
The idea, as best as anyone could tell, was a hybrid model. You'd do these virtual treasure hunts online to win tickets to physical trips and parties, but he made a fatal error right out of the gate. He started teasing that some of these events would happen in the Bahamas.
And the Bahamas, well, they have a long memory.
A very long memory. The Bahamian Ministry of Tourism issued one of the most blistering government statements I've ever seen. They didn't just say no. They didn't just say he's not welcome. They called him a fugitive in the eyes of their government.
Wow.
They said he was persona non grata. Full stop.
That really should have been the end of it. I mean, when a sovereign nation publicly bans you and calls you a fugitive, maybe it's time to pivot to something else. Open a deli, write a quiet blog, just stop.
But he didn't stop. He pivoted to politics for a minute. There were reports he was trying to broker endorsements from hip-hop artists for the 2024 Trump campaign, but that seemed to fizzle out.
And then, in April 2023, he drops the bomb on Twitter.
The tweet heard round the world. Fyre Festival II is finally happening.
I remember seeing this. I, like everyone else, assumed it was a parody account.
It was not. And this kicks off the era that we need to analyze most closely.
Right.
This timeline from 2023 to 2025. Because this wasn't just a random tweet. It was a very calibrated, very deliberate attempt to restart the entire machine.
So he puts the first 100 tickets on sale in August of 2023. They're $499 each.
$499. And to be clear, this was for a festival with no venue.
No lineup.
No date.
Nothing. Just the words Fyre II.
And he claimed they sold out instantly.
Yeah.
Now, we don't have audited records of that sale, but frankly, given the internet's obsession with irony and meta-commentary, I actually believe it.
Oh, I believe it too. There are more than 100 YouTubers and streamers who would pay $500 just for the content opportunity of watching it fail again.
It's a business expense for them.
Exactly. So he raises this initial seed capital from what we could call the irony market, and then things go quiet for a while until late 2024 when the supposed details start leaking out.
Right. A date appears, May 30th to June 2nd, 2025, and a location, Isla Mujeres, Mexico.
Which is off the coast of Cancun. It's a beautiful, very well-established, very real tourist destination.
For a moment, it almost seemed plausible.
Almost. But then Rolling Stone gets its hands on the official ticket packages. And this is where the deep dive really needs to get skeptical. The top-tier package, the VIP experience, was listed at $1.1 million.
$1.1 million.
Okay, I have to push back on this. In the actual luxury experience economy, and I'm talking about things like Virgin Galactic flights to space or private expeditions to climb Mount Everest or buying citizenship in Malta $1.1 million gets you a lot.
It gets you tangible, life-altering assets or experiences.
Exactly. What on earth was McFarland offering for $1 million for a 3-day weekend on an island in Mexico?
The prospectus was predictably vague. It promised things like private yacht access, luxury diving excursions, artist meet and greets, and my personal favorite, lifetime access to all future Fyre events.
Lifetime access to a brand that has held exactly 0 successful events in its entire history is a dubious asset, to put it mildly.
To put it mildly. But the price point I don't think was ever about value. It was a marketing stunt. By anchoring the price way up there at $1.1 million, it makes the $1,400 general admission ticket seem reasonable by comparison. It's a classic pricing psychology tactic, the ridiculously expensive decoy.
But this is where reality once again collided with the pitch deck. February 2025. We're getting close to the festival date. The municipal government of Isla Mujeres releases an official statement.
And they said, in no uncertain terms, we have no record of this. No permit applications have been filed, no sanitation plans, no security contracts, nothing.
So he was selling tickets, including $1 million ticket to a festival in a foreign country, without ever telling the government of that country that he was coming.
It actually gets weirder. The New York Times did a fantastic piece of forensic investigation. They took the GPS coordinates that were listed on the ticket confirmation emails.
The ones sent to the people who actually bought tickets.
The very same. And they plotted those coordinates on a proper nautical chart of the area.
What did they find?
The coordinates were 3 miles off the coast of the island, in the water.
You're kidding me. In the ocean?
Yes.
Not like on a beach, not at a resort, in the water.
In the water. Yeah. Literally just a point in the Caribbean Sea.
Okay. Was this just staggering incompetence, a typo, or was this some kind of clever, jurisdiction dodge?
That's the big debate. Yeah. Some legal analysts at the time suggested he might have been trying to claim the event was taking place in international waters to avoid Mexican labor laws or liability statutes.
But 3 miles out is usually still considered territorial waters, isn't it?
It is, so that theory is shaky. The more likely explanation is that he just picked a pin on a Google map that looked cool and remote without ever checking the actual depth charts or, whether it was land.
So he's selling $1 million ticket to a patch of ocean. Did he have a plan for this? Were there barges? Did he have a flotilla of yachts lined up?
There were no contracts for barges, no contracts for cruise ships, no evidence of any logistical plan whatsoever. It was a phantom location.
And the Times piece pointed out that constructing a stable, floating platform for 3,000 people in open water would cost tens of millions of dollars and take over a year of serious marine engineering.
Right. The logistics were, in a word, impossible. It was Fire Eye all over again, but this time it was wet.
So inevitably the collapse happens mid-April 2025. Just a month before the scheduled date. It's postponed indefinitely.
And McFarland releases this video. He looks tired. He looks defeated. And he says the brand is bigger than what I'm able to lead on my own.
Which was really the first time he ever admitted defeat, wasn't it? It wasn't just a setback or fake news. It was an admission of failure.
It was. And that brings us to the final bizarre chapter of this saga.
Yeah.
July 2025, the eBay auction.
This was the funeral. He put the entire Fyre Festival brand, the trademarks, the IP, the mailing list, the logo, everything up for auction on eBay.
We were watching this happen live. He was hyping it up on social media for weeks, saying the brand was worth millions just because of the global name recognition. Everyone knows Fyre, he kept saying.
And he's not wrong. Everyone does know Fyre.
But they know it as a warning label. They know it as a punchline, not as the luxury mark.
And the final gavel price reflected that. $245,300.
Which, to be fair, is $250,000 for a completely tainted brand. It's not nothing. But when you compare it to the $26 million, he still owes his victims.
It's a drop in the bucket. A rounding error.
Not even that.
Do we know who bought it?
Some anonymous holding company. The rumors are they plan to turn it into a documentary series or maybe a horror-themed attraction.
Yeah.
The irony is just complete.
So here we are, January 2026. Looking back at this absolute wreckage, we have the original Magnises fraud, the Fire Eye fraud, the fraud while on bail, the prison hustle, the crypto pivot, and the ocean festival that never was.
It is a solid decade of unadulterated hubris.
But I want to push back on the hubris label just a little bit.
Yeah.
Because hubris implies just arrogance, a personal failing. This feels, more systemic. Well, when you look at the 2026 landscape, the AI bubble we're all living through right now, the creator economy, where attention is the only currency that really matters, was Billy McFarland truly an outlier, or was he just a little too messy, a little too early?
That is the really uncomfortable truth, isn't it?
Yeah.
Look at the companies that have reached billion-dollar valuations in the last 2 years, with zero profit, sometimes with zero revenue. Look at how our entire market values narrative over cash flow. McFarland's only real crime, you could argue, was that he was just bad at the execution.
That's a terrifying thought.
If he had actually pulled off the festival, if by some miracle the villas had been built and the bands had shown up, he wouldn't be a felon. He'd be on the cover of Forbes.
So the line between a visionary and a con man is just whether the tents arrive on time.
In the current economy, I think the answer is yes.
So for our listeners, especially the professionals tuning in who might be evaluating deals or partnerships in 2026, what's the tactical takeaway here? How do you spot a McFarland before the wire transfer clears?
You have to look at the boring stuff.
The boring stuff.
The boring stuff.
Yeah.
Everyone gets seduced by the pitch deck. Everyone watches the hype video with the models on the beach. You have to ignore that and look at the boring stuff.
Yeah.
The audit trail, the bank charters, the specific language in the terms of service about refunds and venue changes.
And the financing structure.
Crucially, if you find out a potential partner is relying on NCAs or other kinds of high-interest bridge loans, they are already dead. They're insolvent. They just haven't fallen over yet.
So transparency is the only metric that matters.
It's the only one. If they can't or won't show you the raw data, not the pretty slide deck, the actual raw data, you have to walk away.
And I'd add one more thing to that. Beware the allure of the exclusive.
Yes, absolutely.
McFarland's entire career, from Magnises to Fyre to the Met Gala scams, it all relied on the victim's deep-seated desire to be in, to be part of the club that other people couldn't join.
He weaponized our insecurity. He knew that the moment he told you you can't come in, you would pay double to get through the door.
So maybe the ultimate defense against the Billy McFarlands of the world is just a little bit of humility. Be okay with the general admission ticket. Be okay with the regular credit card.
Be okay with the sandwich you made yourself.
Exactly. Be okay with the sandwich you made yourself. It's certainly cheaper than the $1.1 million alternative.
And, it likely tastes better.
That brings us to the end of this deep dive. A decade of the unstoppable hustle finally stopped, or at least auctioned off for parts on eBay. We will be back next week with a look at the new Neuralink regulations coming out of the EU. Until then, check your term sheets.
And stay safe.